Many were the bodies of genuinely unknown transients, vagrants, or those who had died far from home, bodies the spirits had used as convenient vessels. The deepest tragedy lay with those who had integrated fully. The farmer's wife, the councilman, the friendly baker, they were suddenly exposed as mere borrowed flesh, bodies that had been dead for months or even years. People holding hands, the grieving of the unpossessed. The hardest hit were the spouses and children who had been unknowingly living alongside a corpse animated by a demon. Their grief was a complex, horrific tangle of loss, denial, and crushing betrayal. Imagine the horror of a person realizing their husband, wife, or life partner was not only a demon but had been living in the dead body of another person. Mrs. Helen Shaw, whose husband Daniel had moved to town 2 years prior, found herself weeping over the body of a man she didn't know, a man who had possessed Daniel's face, shared his bed, and built a life with her. The loss was triple: the loss of the life she thought she had, the loss of her partner's identity, and the horrifying realization that every intimate moment had been a performance by a demonic entity. The lack of closure. They had no person to mourn. They mourned the illusion, the time stolen, and the violation of their love. This lack of a genuine history made the path to healing treacherous. The memories, the first kiss, the shared laughter, were now tainted, empty echoes of a shadow's manipulation. For the children of these unions, the trauma was arguably deeper. They had been raised by a parent who had no true soul or genuine human affection. The children had to reconcile the gentle, sometimes cold parent they remembered with the monstrous truth revealed in the square. This led to profound identity crises. Who were they, if half their DNA was tied to an unholy union? Minister Thorne and the remaining community had to immediately step in to provide intense counseling and spiritual guidance, helping the children understand that the spirit's occupation of the body did not negate their own human identity or the love they deserved. The path to cleansing and rebirth. The town, now stripped bare of its invaders, faced a monumental task of physical and spiritual cleansing. The final rites. Minister Thorne led a massive community effort to give the true dead their proper final burial. A collective act of sanctity meant to ensure no spirit could ever again claim these vessels. The graves were marked with symbols of divine protection and blessed ground. Rebuilding trust. The greatest damage was to community trust. Every remaining relationship was scrutinized. People whispered, "Was my neighbor real? Was my friend always themselves?" The rebuilding of social bonds was slow, founded on shared prayer and a renewed, profound appreciation for genuine human connection and vulnerability. The town became hyper-aware of the seal of God, recognizing it as their sole true shield. The season of shadow had passed, leaving behind a scarred but spiritually fortified community that knew the true cost of forgetting the unseen battle. The kingdom of deep night, previously characterized by its silent, cold efficiency, was now a nexus of chilling, soundless fury. The expelled spirits, having been forcefully ripped from the mortal dimension, did not return in a glorious throng but rather as scattered, broken echoes. They materialized near the throne of Lucifer as wisps of injured shadow, their ethereal bodies vibrating with the agony of the sudden, unauthorized retreat. Lucifer's initial reaction was not a roaring inferno, but a terrifying, absolute stillness. The darkness around his throne intensified, sucking all ambient light and warmth from the dimension. Lucifer, his voice, a low hiss of static electricity and grinding stone, the great infiltration. Severed. The subtle anchor to the world of men. Uprooted. And by what agency? A simple man, calling upon an uncomplicated truth. An insult I will not suffer. The archdemon altar, the strategist of the abyss, kneeling, "Lord," the error was tactical. The vessels, though unguarded, were of the earthbound sort. They carried the lingering scent of mortality. The confrontation, occurring in a space charged with collective, open-air petition, amplified the retaliatory energy. The minister used a frequency of unadulterated word that our current form cannot absorb or deflect. The archdemon Lilith, the master of subversion and intimacy, recoiling from the memory. The depth of integration, my lord, was a double-edged blade. The binding to the living, the marriages, the children, provided a vast surface area for the cleansing power to seize upon. When the bond was severed, the recoil was violent. We were exposed to their light on all fronts at once. Lucifer absorbed their reports, his cold power calculating the true weakness revealed, the reliance on physical proximity and a single direct method of attack, possession. The strategy of the fallen vessel is compromised. Direct, Visible habitation of the human form has been proven fragile. The shepherd has learned to identify the wolf wearing the sheep's wool. We shall cease this crude masquerade. The next step will not be a physical invasion, but a spiritual corrosion. Lucifer commanded a complete overhaul of their operational strategy, focusing on targets that were far more numerous and less protected than the dead, the living, unvigilant human soul. The spirits would abandon the graveyard and instead target the unshielded mind. Since they could not possess the body, they would subtly influence the thoughts. Weaponizing doubt and division. The expelled legions were to return to the human sphere, not as visible entities, but as the whisper of doubt against every true thing. They would target the community that had just been cleansed. Spirits were dispatched to the spouses who survived the revelation, fueling suspicions. How could your partner truly have loved you if a demon possessed them? Doesn't this prove you are unlovable? Targeting Minister Thorn. They would begin an incessant mental campaign of self-criticism, sowing thoughts like, "You are a fraud. Your power is temporary. The deaths are on your hands. You only saved them to fuel your own pride." The goal was to dismantle his faith in his own ministry, thereby silencing the only effective countervoice. The amplification of the mundane. The spirits would subtly influence the human perception of reality, focusing on the negative. A minor traffic jam would become a source of rage. A small slight from a neighbor would become evidence of a deep-seated plot. The goal was to create a constant, low-level internal chaos, making the peace of God seem unreachable and abstract. The glorification of self. Lilith's legions would focus on the sin of pride. They would whisper that human achievement was solely human, that there was no need for a divine connection. The focus shifted from making men wicked to making men gods unto themselves, creating an impenetrable spiritual arrogance that would repel grace more effectively than any direct sin. Realizing the power of the minister's word, Lucifer understood that their next attack must be on the transmission of truth itself. They would not attack the church directly, but the cultural conduits that shape human thought. Spirits would be tasked with influencing the storytellers and communicators of the human world. Artists, writers, musicians, and journalists. The goal was to subtly shift the human definition of morality. Making evil beautiful. The horrors of the abyss would be presented in human art as exciting, complex, or merely misunderstood. Dark themes would be celebrated as edgy or courageous storytelling, desensitizing the human spirit to the very things that lead to darkness. Silencing the sacred. Public discourse would be saturated with so much noise, argument, and triviality that the minister's message, the simple life-saving truth, would be dismissed as irrelevant, ancient, or merely one opinion among millions. The strategy was distraction, not prohibition. The erosion of the hearth. Family. Since the demon's most successful and most exposed integrations were through marriage, they would now dismantle the family unit from the outside. They would promote doctrines of absolute, unburdened selfishness, convincing family members that their highest calling was their own pleasure and comfort, making commitment seem foolish and outdated. Lucifer saved his most insidious plot for the one place that was directly shielded by God, the spiritual institutions. The cultivation of hypocrisy. The spirits would infiltrate the hearts of those who claimed to be devout. They would not attack their belief, but their practice. The goal was to create a veneer of piety over a core of cold, judgmental selfishness. People would see the light demonstrated by people who acted with cruelty, gossip, and greed, leading the uncommitted to reject the truth based on the failure of its followers. Spirits would inspire a love for ritual over relationship. The church would become obsessed with its buildings, its budgets, and its programs, while neglecting the core practices that drove the demons out: fervent, authoritative prayer, and selfless love. The church would be left with a beautiful shell, but no active, defending power. In the years that followed the vanishing, the success of Lucifer's new, subtle approach became terrifyingly apparent. The cleansed town did not experience another spectacular invasion. Instead, it experienced fatigue. Minister Thorn, though he fought bravely against the torrent of self-doubt and criticism, found his congregation slowly shrinking, not from fear of demons, but from boredom with the constant call to vigilance. People preferred to forget the horror and focus on the latest cultural distraction. The children of the demon spouses, now grown, struggled. Though they knew the truth, they were constantly exposed to a media and culture that glorified the same selfishness and pride that had animated their former parents. They began to doubt the severity of the original threat. Asterisk the world at large, having heard the strange, unbelievable stories of the mass hallucination in the small town, dismissed it. The lie of normalcy was far easier to believe than the terror of the unseen. Lucifer, observing from the deep night, found a cold satisfaction. Direct possession is a singular wound that invites a swift countercure, he mused as altar. But corrosion is systemic.